Dr. Reagan, the meeting is now live and you can begin when you're ready.
Outstanding. Well, thank you, Ernest. Well, I want to wish everybody a good morning. My name is Mike Reagan, and I'm the chair of the Family Practice Advisory Committee. I have 10:03 in the morning, and I would like to call the November 4th, 2020 Family Practice Advisory Committee to order. This meeting is being held via video conference. Please be aware that although we are meeting via video conference, this meeting is still being broadcast via the internet. And I'll tell you just anecdotally, we're trying to follow the rules very carefully here. So bear with us as we walk through this. Before we begin introductions, I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome any of those joining via Zoom and ask that you observe the following etiquette. So as you make a comment, please state your name before you speak. This is to make sure we can keep it in the record appropriately. So if you make motions or seconds or have a comment, please state your name. When you are not speaking, please mute your microphone. That'll help us keep the background noise down. And so we're going to start off with a roll call, but I want to welcome Zoe Wong, who is the new governor's appointee, joining us today. And somewhere in my list of folks, there you are. So welcome to you. We're glad to have you on board. I'll start with a member's roll call to ensure that we have a quorum. When I call your name, please respond to confirm that you're on the call. Okay, so get ready with your unmute. And as I call your name, shout out that you're here. First off, Fred Unger.
I'm here.
Ruth Chambers. Okay. I don't see Ruth. Todd Dorton. Lewis Foxhall.
Present.
Brett Johnson.
Here.
Mark Nadeau.
I'm here.
Zoe Wong.
I'm here.
Damon Strands.
Present.
Dana Sprudy.
Here.
Ed Warwick. Martin Ortega. And I'm Mike Reagan. I am present.
So Mike, this is Eric Warwick. I don't know if you said Ed. Sorry, I misheard that. If you're looking for Eric Warwick, he's here.
Did I say it wrong, Eric? I apologize if I did. And for anybody else, if
That's
I
all right.
butchered your name, I apologize. My name gets butchered regularly. I'm known as Mike Reagan. Okay, so Ernest, do we have a quorum?
Yes, we do.
Ernest, I couldn't hear you.
Yes, we do, sir.
Did anybody hear Ernest? I'm not hearing him. So you said we do have a quorum?
Yes, he said that he would do.
Very
Yes, we
good.
do.
Okay. So if you would record in the minutes that we have a quorum. Members, to ensure that we maintain a quorum, please keep your cameras turned on. If you don't have them on, please turn them on for the duration of the meeting. So at this time, I would ask coordinating board staff present on the call to introduce themselves to the committee.
I'll start, Dr. Reagan. I'm Ray Martinez. I'm the Deputy Commissioner for Academic Affairs and Workforce Education here at the Coordinating Board.
Welcome.
Thank you.
So I'm going to jump in, and I was actually going to introduce Ray to you all this morning. So you all know me. You've been around me forever. But I'm going to tell you a little bit about Deputy Commissioner Ray Martinez. He is now he's responsible for critical functions in academic programs, grant administration, workforce education, and post-secondary readiness and success. In March, Deputy Commissioner Martinez added the moniker of COVID-19 czar to his duties. He relentlessly worked to make sure that our higher education institutions had updated information and responses to frequently asked questions. His responsibilities include developing and maintaining effective, evidence-based administrative processes and strategies for streamlining students' pathways to affordable, high-quality, and high-value credentials, sustaining strong partnerships with higher education leaders and employers to accelerate innovation in education delivery and research and development, and workforce education as well, and securing input and support from key internal and external stakeholders to execute and advance the coordinating board's strategic priorities. So Ray's held numerous positions in the higher education landscape, including his most recent previous position as the president of the Independent Colleges and Universities of Texas, or ICUT, which is a membership association that serves the state and federal policy interests of Texas nonprofit independent institutions of higher education. Prior to joining ICUT, Ray served as chancellor of Western Governors University. He also held senior governmental relations positions at Rice University and Texas A&M International. And he previously served as the director of the Committee on Higher Education in the Texas Senate. Ray also has a substantial amount of federal policy experience, teaching experience, and he's an election law expert. Ray's a native of Alice, Texas. He received his bachelor's degree from Southwestern and his law degree from University of Houston. I am honored to introduce my boss and a great leader, Deputy Commissioner Ray Martinez, to you all this morning. So now, Ray.
That's more like it, Stacy. Good job.
Thank
Well,
you.
Thank you, Stacy. And Dr. Reagan, is it okay if I take just a couple of minutes to give a quick update to the committee?
Yes, sir. Please do.
Is that okay? Yeah, thank you, sir. And I apologize, Stacy, I jumped the gun there. And so, but thank you for the very generous introduction. I'm so glad to be here. I'm joined by excellent colleagues who I hope will introduce themselves at the appropriate time from the coordinating board. I'm very fortunate to have just a wonderful high level of very professional and very accomplished colleagues here at the agency. Let me just take a couple of minutes and tell you a little bit about some of the things that we're working on here at the agency. And I'll start with what Stacy mentioned earlier, and that is I began with the agency 8 months ago, maybe 9 months ago. February the 1st was my first day, without, of course, knowing that 6 weeks later, all of higher education, not just our agency, but all of higher education across the state would be disrupted in unprecedented ways, perhaps as Commissioner Harrison Keller has said, our boss has said, in ways that are unprecedented since World War II, is the type of disruption that we've seen in the higher education community across the state and across the country. As Stacy referenced, in mid-March, Commissioner Keller asked me to take the lead for the agency on our COVID response. And really, all of my colleagues here at the agency have contributed to the response that we've tried to provide as an agency. My role was essentially to convene, at least initially, an internal group that helped to receive and to respond to a high number of questions and concerns that were coming in from our higher education institutions across the state. So we convened a 10 or 12 person work group here at the agency that began meeting in mid-March. And through the course of the next many months, the work of this group has resulted in the development of about 80, maybe closer to 90 FAQs that have been posted to our website that are all related to concerns and questions from higher ed about COVID-related disruptions to students, to their campus operations, to reopening, to how to get some of the workforce education folks back onto campuses at a safe time, because much of that work involves in-person learning aspects of instruction that can't be done effectively online. So there was a lot of pressure in the first 2 or 3 months to see if there was any way that we could safely allow some workforce education courses to come back onto campuses in a limited way. Those are the things that we focused on, myself, Stacy, and really all of our colleagues here at the agency in helping to serve the needs of our higher education institutions. You know, the other thing I'll say about this is that from the beginning, Commissioner Keller emphasized to us that as we did our work in response to COVID-19 concerns from higher ed institutions, that we do it with a framework that allows for what the commissioner called maximum flexibility. And he wanted us to be responsive in a timely manner, but also to provide for as much flexibility as we could, particularly when it comes to the agency wearing its hat as a regulator. So to the extent that we can provide flexibility and even some level of continuity, if we were able to allow for deadlines to be extended for certain reporting requirements, for example, a lot of which had to be done in coordination and with permission from the governor's office. So there was a process involved for us to be coordinating with the governor's office. When we do that, the commissioner was really stressing, let's try to give our institutions of higher education as much of a runway, if you will, not do it for a couple of months, but do it through the fall semester, or in some cases through the full academic year that we're currently in. And that's what we've tried to do. And I think we've been pretty successful at it. And that work continues. While the work group does not meet on a daily basis the way we used to in the first 3 or 4 months of the pandemic, we are still meeting on a regular basis and receiving inquiries from the field and then addressing them primarily via FAQs. The other thing I would say real quick, and then I need to give you your time back, is that, you know, there's many observations we can take from the interactions that we have from our discussions with faculty and with administrators and other staff members and even students across the state with regard to the impact of COVID-19 on higher education institutions. Some of you have heard Commissioner Keller speak in other venues, and he actually says this a lot better than I do, but I think the 3 points that he makes are worth repeating every time I'm in front of an audience myself about the observations that we have noted over the past 8 or 9 months of this pandemic. I think the first is that higher education institutions across Texas continue to rise to the occasion, and we have seen them work very hard to ensure the safety and the health of students, faculty, and staff, and campus visitors. And that's something that we continue to assist with. We've put out as an agency checklists, which are informed and guided by CDC protocols and other stakeholders that provide this type of information. The institutions of higher education across the state have taken our checklist, have turned it into campus-specific guidance, and by and large, they've done a remarkable job, in our opinion, of protecting the health and safety, again, of students, faculty, staff, and campus visitors. The second thing, and I'll close very quickly, the second thing is, I would say, again, the unprecedented amount of innovation that's happening out on our campuses. The switch that had to be made back in March and April to go from in-person instruction to primarily fully online instruction was a remarkable one. And there were fits and starts through that process. We've learned a lot about how to deliver better distance learning, online education, but the fact that it was done smoothly, relatively smoothly, and successfully on such a quick turnaround is pretty remarkable. And the lessons that we've learned are now numerous, and a great deal of innovation is happening, and lessons about how to be more effective in teaching students via online modalities is happening, and that's something that this agency is emphasizing very much. The final point I'll make is the fact that at some point, and I think that recovery is already happening, the economic recovery, as we saw back in the 2008 recession, the economic recovery will be led by higher education institutions across the state. All sectors, but particularly our public four-year universities and our community colleges and our TSTC campuses across the state. And we as an agency have to be in a position to support that economic recovery, and that's what we're doing. We've been very generously granted some funds from the federal government that has been allocated to the governor's office, that have been now given to our agency to support various aspects of recovery, various aspects of campus operations, grants to students that will eventually, I think, lead the recovery that our state will continue to see on the economic front. So with that, Dr. Reagan, I'll turn it back to you. And I'm sorry I took a little bit more time than I should have, but I wanted you to know how much we appreciate the work that you all are doing. We know each one of you, particularly with what you do in your professional life, we know how busy you are, and we thank you for taking the time to serve on this important advisory committee. And I thank you all personally for having me on the committee today. So Dr. Reagan, I think you're on my screen someplace. I kind of lost track, but
Yeah,
hopefully you're there.
just around a
There you
little
are.
bit.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
So, Deputy Commissioner, thank you for those comments. I think they're on point. Certainly in our neck of the woods, higher ed was very helpful to us as a hospital and health science center in terms of even creating PPE. And your comments are on point. And I think also we have a great interest in the economic recovery. I think we're all a little worried about how that's going to play out. And so thank you for those comments.
Thank you. Thanks.
Yes, sir. I believe we have some other coordinating board staff. If they would introduce themselves.
Sure. Ernest Hawkins, Program Director here at the Coordinating Board.
Reinhold Cornelius, I'm Director in Academic Quality and Workforce at the Coordinating Board.
Jody Lopez, Administrative Support.
I'm
I'm
Cindy
Lisa.
Fisher.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Lisa. Go ahead.
I'm Lisa Mahler, Senior Director, Student Financial Aid Programs.
Hi, Cindy Fisher, Program Director, Coordinating Board.
I'm John Wyatt, Senior Director for External Relations at the agency.
And I believe we have a couple of other guests on the phone. If you would introduce yourselves as well.
Tom Banning, the CEO of the Texas Academy of Family Physicians.
Hello, Tom. I thought it was Cindy Banning there for a minute. Looks like you changed your name. That's good work.
My wife and kids have hacked my computer, and my name changes daily.
There you go.
I'm Cindy Passmore, and I direct the Faculty Development Center that is at TCOM in Fort Worth.
Very good. Did we miss anybody in introductions? I'm scanning and it looks like we're good. Okay, so we'll move on to our agenda items then. The first agenda item is approval of the minutes from the previous meetings. The May 27th, 2020 Family Practice Advisory Committee meeting. I believe those were sent out in advance. Do I have a motion for the approval of the minutes for the May 2020 committee meeting?
Dr. Schranz, motion to approve.
Thank you. I have a motion from Dr. Schranz. Do I have a second?
This is Dana Sprudy, second.
I heard a couple, but I heard Dr. Sprudy jump in there, so we'll take that one. So any discussion or amendments need to be made to the minutes? Hearing none, I would ask for members to say aye. And I believe this is our first and probably maybe one of the few voting items. Ernest, are we wanting to do a roll call vote?
I think for this case, we could just do a
Acclamation?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So all those in favor, do two things for me. If you're in favor of approving the minutes as presented, say aye and raise your hand. Okay.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Okay. Anybody opposed, say nay and also indicate with your hand signal. Don't hear any nays, all ayes. So the minutes are approved and the motion passes. We'll come on down to consideration of the next item, which is FY 2020 Family Practice Residency Program balances. Agenda item 3 is the consideration of adopting staff recommendations for utilizing fiscal year 2020 Family Practice Residency Program remaining funds. So this is remaining funds. And Ernest, the Program Director for Academic Quality and Workforce, will present this item and be available if we have any questions. And I'll turn it over to Ernest.
Thank you, Dr. Reagan. Jody, would you mind putting up the slides for this agenda item, please?
While you're doing that, just a general background. So some funds are remaining that need to be handled and placed in a decision about where to put those funds. And so that's what this agenda item is about. And so we'll hear some information from staff once we get the presentation up.
Okay, it looks like Jody might be having some difficulties.
It's
so let me,
coming. It's
okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay. Thanks, Jody. Okay, well, while Jody's getting that up,
It froze, I'm sorry.
Okay, wanted to provide the committee with first off a summary of the fiscal 21 appropriation and award allocations, and that'll kind of segue us into the source of those remaining funds. So as you recall, the appropriation amount for fiscal year 21 was $5 million. After the annual financial reports for fiscal year 20 and some housekeeping, we determined that we had $17,102.62 in refunds that came back, which increased our award budget for 21 to $5,017,102.62. From there, we awarded support grants to the Faculty Development Center in the amount of $100,000. We made 40 awards to rural rotation at $2,500 a piece for a total of $100,000. And this year we received 3 applications for public health at $2,000 a piece for $6,000, which rounded out our support grant total for $206,000 for the year, which left our operational budget at about $4.8 million. So with that, we received 893 records of residents, and we were able to certify 880 residents. The difference there is the folks that are, of course, completing their training or off-cycle status. So 880 is the magic number. And as a result of that, the per resident amount was calculated to be at $5,447.72. That amount, along with our support grant, totals $4.9 million, which left us a whopping $8 for the appropriation. That, in combination with the remaining balances, gave us a total remaining balance of $17,110.62. Now, the source of those remaining funds are from 3 areas. The largest, fiscal year 20, are rural rotation cancellations. That's $12,500. These cancellations were due to COVID and the strict restrictions on some of the sites in not accepting residents. So we received notification late that a few programs could not reschedule rotations, so they had to release the money, and that was $12,500. The other 2 sources are either unexpended interest earned on coordinating board dollars that were identified on the certificates for 21, and unexpended, unobligated funds that the program basically held on to and had to return at the end of the fiscal year. That amount is $17,102.62 total. So what we have to work with is $17,110.62. I have 2 options for the committee to consider and discuss. Option 1 is a combination of rural rotation awards and faculty development center. We recommend adding 6 awards to the rural rotation program at $2,500 a piece, which totals $15,000. And the remainder, $2,110.62, roll that into the Faculty Development Center agreement. Option 2, we would not provide additional support to rural rotation, and that $17,000 figure would roll into the Faculty Development Center agreement for the year. Of course, we can discuss other options, but I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Reagan and open up the discussions on these 2 options. Dr. Reagan?
So the first thing is any questions? I'm sorry, I think the graphics would have helped, and maybe we're going to get those here in a second. Here we go. Ernest, why don't you walk us through the graphic, if you would, before we
Okay,
have
and,
discussion.
so I had a PowerPoint slide. This is a PDF that I just pulled up. Can you guys see that okay? Okay, great. So would you like me to start from the top again, or do we just want to talk about the options?
Yes.
Okay, so again, the three boxes or tables to the bottom indicate the sources and the two options I just went over. So again, the sources are from three areas: cancellations of rural rotation, the amount of $12,500, and the two refunds were from state programs and were either unexpended interest earned on coordinating board funds or monies that were not utilized for the fiscal year and were held on until August 31st of 2020. Those were identified on the annual financial reports and sent back. So that gave us a total of $17,102.62 to work with. Two options that I put together for the committee to consider and discuss. Option one was a combination of the Rural Rotation Program and Faculty Development Center, proposing 6 new awards to Rural Rotation at $2,500 apiece, totaling $15,000. And the remainder of that, $2,110.62 to the Faculty Development Center for a total of $17,110.62. Second option is not adding additional support to rural rotation and funneling the total amount $17,110.62 to the FDC for that second option. Just to kind of give you perspective on we received 64 applications for rural rotation, and we're only able to support 40 based on the recommendations. So we still have room to grow there. We could make 6 additional awards to 5 programs that still had residents that were not funded and are still eligible and are still completing the rural rotation awards. So those are the options that we have available to us at this time. And like I said, we could discuss different options or alternative options at your discretion.
Okay, thank you. So any questions for Ernest?
Yeah, this is Dr. Strands. So the 6 spots you have, they're already currently in process?
Not sure if they're in process, but they've submitted applications and are in line to complete their rotation, at the date indicated. So from my understanding, they will still complete the rotation whether they're funded or not.
So, Ernest, this money is applied to what period of time? Is from now to the end of the fiscal year, or?
Yes, sir. August 31st of 2021.
Okay. And the rotations that were canceled were?
Those were fiscal year 20, so those ended August 31st of this year.
Okay, but people are lined up and ready to go to places where they can actually complete.
Yes, sir.
Is that what you're saying? Okay.
As far as we know, yes, unless there's turn events and the sites don't accept any more residents as they didn't do last year. So, but yes, sir, they're approved and on standby as alternates.
That strikes me as one of the risk of assigning the funds to rural rotations if they were to be canceled. And I think it may be hard for us to know if that's going to likely come to pass or not.
Correct. This last year we got notified pretty late, so we were not able to utilize those. But luckily we have authority to carry those funds over and utilize them for this next fiscal year.
Okay.
Those will not be, so those will not be available after the end of this fiscal year. So it's imperative that we try to use those this fiscal year.
Yes.
Dr. Reagan's point, if the funds are allocated to rotations that turn out not to work, can they automatically be rolled over as long as they're to another rotation, as long as they're used up during this fiscal year? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, sir.
It wouldn't have to come back here again.
No.
Ernest, would those funds be designated on the first come, first serve kind of basis, or what's the strategy?
So with the 24 applications still outstanding, I've asked programs to rank their residents however they felt was appropriate. So I've got a list of those, and So we had 10 programs submit applications. 5 of those we were able to fund through the first round. We maxed the total awards at 5 for each program so that everybody got a fair share. And we have 5 programs that submitted, more than 5 applications. So those 5 programs are the ones that are associated with those 24 applications, and we will go based on their rankings. So basically, 5 of those programs will receive 1 award, and then we will re-rank that last one to make the 6. And that'll probably be done by just a random generator out of those 5 programs to basically generate a name or a number, and we'll assign that 6th award that way.
Okay. Any other discussion from the committee?
So I think this is Mark Nadeau. I think the money seems originally mostly intended for use for the residents for that purpose. And I think we should try to repurpose it to that as long as we feel as though we can fully execute it.
Okay, thank you for that discussion. Any other discussion?
Dr. Warwick here. I guess this is just more of a procedural question. If it's reassigned to the other residency program, what's the level of work involved in order to then transfer the funds? Are we talking that it takes $2,000 to transfer the funds over to the residents? I'm just trying to have an understanding of the underlying cost to the CV as well.
No, sir. My understanding is we've already created contracts for the initial 40. And I would just submit in writing or an amendment to those contracts to add the additional amounts to those specific programs.
Okay, so
that shouldn't be a break in the process. So,
awesome, thanks.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for that. Any other discussion? Okay, hearing none. Do I have a motion?
I can't remember whether it's option 1 or 2, but the one that had $15,000 going to fund the rural rotations and the rest going to the faculty development center. Looks like it's option 1. I would move
1. So funding 6 rural rotations at $2,500 for a total of $15,000, and then $2,100 to the FDC.
That's my motion.
Okay, you're projecting it. Okay, so you've made a motion for support of option 1.
Yes.
And
Very
I'll
good.
second that motion.
I believe that was Dr. Schranz.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I got
No. That's all right. You got it. Yeah, frog in the throat. I get it. Okay, so can we stop the projection and go back to there we go. Now, for this, we are going to do a roll call vote just to be sure that we get it accurately as it revolves finances and business operations. So I have a motion and a second. So as we go through, as I call your name, please state whether you are for or against the motion to approve option 1. We'll start the same order as the last time I did the roll call. So Fred Unger. Fred raised his hand, but he's on mute.
I am for approval.
4. Thank you. Ruth Chambers. Todd Dorton. Lewis Foxhall.
4.
Brett Johnson.
4.
Mark Nadeau.
4.
Zoe Wong.
4.
Damon Schranz.
4.
Dana Sprudy.
4.
Eric Warwick.
4.
Martin Ortega. And Mike Reagan, and I vote 4. So it appears the motion passes unanimously. We've made the referral of those funds for option 1. Anything else you need on that, Ernest?
No, sir. That's perfect. Thank you all very much.
Very good. All right, we'll move to our next item, coordinating board updates. Stacy Silverman I think is going to provide us with an overview. Dr. Silverman.
Sorry about that. I had to turn off my mute button. So first, let me just say thank you for you all taking your time to be here this morning. I want to just update you on 3 items. The request for applications for planning grants, which Cindy Fisher is going to talk about a little bit, but I want to really make sure you all know about it. The GME Opportunities Report, and also something that the coordinating board was required to do, a report on the feasibility of streamlining physician licensure for advanced practice registered nurses. That was Senate Bill 2011. So first, the GME Opportunity Grant, that's going to be published on Friday. And if you or your entities, anyone that you're around, hospitals that you know of, want to begin a residency program, this is a great opportunity to get some funding to support that. And I'll let Cindy talk about that a little bit more. Additionally, we just published the, well, we're in the process of, we haven't quite finalized it. We have a few little tweaks to go on the GME Opportunities Report. This is a report that we publish every other year, required by the legislature. It includes a comparison of the number of first-year graduate medical education positions to the number of medical school graduates. Also provides statistical analysis of recent trends and projections on the number of medical school graduates and first-year GME positions. Also includes methods and strategies for achieving the ratio of 1.1 to 1 for GME to med school grad, and evaluation of current projected workforce demands and needs, and an examination of whether the state should continue to create a new first-year residency position as medical schools increase their enrollments. Since 2014, when the Texas legislature first began its GME efforts, and I know Cindy's going to talk about this a little bit more, but more than 400 new first-year residency positions have been created, and 19 new medical residency programs have been established. I just wanted to alert you that that publication is out on our website, not quite finalized yet, but do avail yourself of that. And it does show the what I call figure 10 in the report, which shows the projection of what our medical school graduates are going to look like, and the gap that is continuing to exist in the future. Right now, we met the ratio, so we had 10% more first-year residency positions, roughly, than medical school graduates, but that is going to quickly erode once the new schools begin to graduate their students. And finally, just a quick update on Senate Bill 2011, which passed last session. It required the coordinating board to collaborate with one institution of higher education, the Texas Medical Board, and the Texas Board of Nursing to conduct a study regarding the feasibility of a pilot program to streamline the requirements for advanced practice registered nurses to become eligible for a license to practice medicine. Texas Occupation Code defines an APRN as a nurse practitioner, nurse midwife, nurse anesthetist, or clinical nurse specialist. So last spring, we were going to convene a group of institutions made up of, medical schools and schools that also offered APRN education. COVID-19 came along and kind of blew up those plans, because we really recognized that the institutions that would be involved were really busy caring for COVID-19 patients while also transitioning their students to online learning. So in order to complete the study, we consulted with the Board of Nursing, the Medical Board, and representatives from the UT Health Science Center Houston. And included in the report is a description of the education and licensure requirements for APRNs, also those requirements for medical students and residents. The study includes input from nurse practitioners and incorporates data from the Texas Center for Nursing Workforce Studies and the Medical and Dental Application Service. In conclusion, the report finding is that it is unlikely feasible at this time to implement or develop a pilot project that would actually streamline APRN nursing. Especially important in this is that the accreditor for the medical schools has some serious guidelines and requirements that you all know, I know very well, but that would run afoul of accreditation requirements pretty quickly. So that concludes my remarks. I'm happy to take any questions from you at this time.
Any questions for Stacy?
Stacy, did you say the report is on the website now?
It is. If you go, we'll share the link.
Okay.
We'll send you all the links to the reports.
And I had just one other question, if I might.
Sure.
Pardon my ignorance on this, but whose responsibility is it to assure that there are we maintain the 1.1 ratio of training program slots to GME slots?
So great question, Dr. Foxhall. That is actually in statute as a goal for the state. So it is a statutory goal that the state maintain the 1.1 to 1 ratio. Aspirational, but good. And you know, on that note, I've already gotten inquiries from the Legislative Budget Board folks about the upcoming budget. I will say, and I know you're going to hear from Tom Banning in more detail, but the state is facing what I believe is about a $6 billion shortfall. Fortunately, on this go around, the agency was asked to take a 5% reduction across the board, and we could parse it out in any way we could. The agency elected not to take that from the family practice residency program. So I'm very pleased about that. Additionally, I will say in that GME report, one of our 3 recommendations is that the legislature continue funding the family practice residency program. So.
Stacy, it's Mark Nato. The first item you talked about with residency funding positions, it sounded like that's only for new residencies, not for existing residency growth. Is that correct?
It's for new and expansion. So
Okay.
if you have a residency program, you want to expand it out, that's great. As long as you're expanding your first year and as long as you're a residency program that takes first year residents. Does that make sense? It's the GME expansion effort.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions for Dr. Silverman? Thank you for that update. I appreciate it. I think next we'll hear updates on the planning grant program presented by Cindy Fisher.
All right, thank you for providing the opportunity for me to give this update. I want to start first with just talking a little bit about the GME Expansion grant program, and give an update on that. Last time this meeting was held, we were in the midst of doing verification, and we did not have all the details of how many programs were, how many positions were going to be funded, and what the awards look like. Ernest, if you can put the next slide. So this is the breakdown for FY20. We have $150 million that we're looking at for the biennium. For FY20, we ended up with 895 positions that were funded. This is the breakdown by specialty. If you see at family medicine, we have 20 programs, and we are funding for FY20 215. FY21 verification is going to start in March after match. So again, we won't have those numbers until May, right around May, June, when we send out awards for FY21. So total for for this grant period, looks like we have about 2002 positions that we're going to be funding. And that's, again, based on the verification for 21, see what happens for 21. Okay, the next slide is a breakdown by specialty, and it's not all categories, just the primary care. So it looks like, I don't know if you can see that on that slide, but primary care total is 63.2%, with family medicine at 23.6%. These have been identified in past RFAs as specialties that were in need of increasing the physicians. So the RFAs have been geared toward that, and we've done pretty good with the primary care aspect of this at 63%. The next
Cindy,
slide. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Can I ask a quick question? This is Tom Banning. Are you, and it may be too soon to know the answer to this, are you tracking 3 years out of residency to make sure that they've stayed in primary care? In other words, a lot of internal medicine physicians go on to subspecialize after completing their internal medicine residency.
It's not part of the expansion grant program. Stacy might have a better idea if that's tracked somewhere else. Stacy, do you have any input on?
So Tom, that's a great question. We certainly have that capability. One thing that I'm really excited about at the agency is that we're doing a data modernization project right now. So I'm hopeful that soon access to our information and data is going to be a whole lot easier. And we do get the medical board, we've for years had the ability to track where specialists end up, where physicians end up. And we can certainly do that with this group as well. And I think, now that we're entering, I think it's the 7th year, it's probably a really good time to do that. Sadly, we just don't have the bandwidth to do it yet, but we're happy to work with any institution that wants to do this research, because it's something that I get really excited about. And we now know we have that connection too as well between medical school and residency training, which we were missing that component for a very long time, but now we fully have where graduates of medical schools are actually going into their residency programs. So it's probably time to take a look at that again. Maybe by next summer, I hope. Anyway, hope that addresses your question.
Also, along that line, are we able to track over time where trainees who graduate enter practice? Are they staying in Texas, or do we know?
We certainly have that ability. We haven't been doing it, but it is something that is near and dear to my heart that I hope we get to look into and delve into a little bit more. And I think it's really timely. I think we could get some great publications out of it as well. So I will say this, and I'm sorry for jumping in, but I was asked, I guess, about a year ago to serve on a committee in California. So California has looked to Texas to see what we're doing, because we're doing an awful lot. So the California Commission on, I'm not sure what it's called, on Residency Expansion or something along those lines, just met recently, and they're really trying to secure some funding. They've got a giant difficulty similar to what Texas faces. Those rural communities and underserved areas, really tough to get residency training there. So it is a testament to the work that you all have done. So I just really appreciate it. And I just want you to know that it's recognized nationally as well. So thanks.
All right, so Ernest, next slide. So now the planning grant program RFA. So as Stacy pointed out, this RFA is going to be posted on Friday. The first deadline is going to be a notice of intent deadline that's due in 2 weeks from that date on November the 20th. All the information's in the RFA regarding how to do that. There will be a form on the website that programs or entities can use to submit. The planning grant there's going to be priority criteria for this planning grant as well. There's a minimum of 2 awards right now that are going to be awarded. The priority criteria for award selection is going to be based on the Texas Department of State Health Services report that projects physician shortages. They go out to year 2032, I believe. And so what they're looking at is obviously primary care again. And there's 3 specific regions in Texas that they're looking at critical shortage areas. And so that's going to be a primary criteria, the primary one. And then there's a couple of other criteria that's going to go down. So we're looking again at primary care. The deadline for application is going to be December 11th. And then in mid-February, after we get all those in, the board is going to announce the grant awards. So when we look back at previous planning grants, we look at the numbers. Ernest, next slide. This is just I pulled out the family medicine program. So from 2014, when the program was initiated, there's been 19 residency programs established from all the planning grant awards, and 7 of those have been family medicine programs. So we're looking to fund more awards to primary care. So it looks like more, family medicine programs could be established, depending on applications received and what's awarded and, what the programs start. So, there could be this, and this plays into the fact that there might be more family medicine. We have more family medicine programs coming on board, I believe, next year that might be eligible for the family practice funds. So this program is pushing more primary care. So I just wanted to let you guys know how many programs we've funded so far with the planning grant. And that's all the information I had. If anybody has any questions.
So any questions for Cindy? Cindy, thank you for that update. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
All right, well, thank you. So we'll move on to our next item, which is an update on the Physician Education and Loan Repayment Program. Lisa Mahler.
Since some of you may not be familiar with this program, I'd like to provide some background information first. This program was perhaps the first state student loan repayment program in the country at the time it was authorized in 1985. You can go to the next slide, Jody. The National Health Service Corps Loan Repayment Program had existed for a short time, but that program involves advancement of funds in exchange for a contract agreement to provide 2 years of service in a high-need health professional shortage area, or HPSA. Those who do not complete the 2-year service commitment are required to pay a heavy penalty. Today, the penalty in the federal loan repayment program is a minimum of $31,000, even if no federal funds have been disbursed. On the other hand, the PELRP, the Physician Education Loan Repayment Program, was designed as a payment after service model. That is, each loan repayment award is disbursed after a year of service has been completed. This guarantees a return on the state's investment and doesn't require costly collections and loan servicing activities. Next slide. As you can see, qualifying physicians may receive loan repayment awards for up to $160,000 or $180,000 over a period of 4 years, depending on when they enrolled in the program. Those whose initial applications were received on or after September 1 of 2019 may qualify for the higher amount. The main purpose of the program is to attract and retain primary care physicians in health professional shortage areas and therefore subspecialists practicing in primary care HIPSAs are considered only if funds remain available after all applications from primary care physicians have been considered. Also, up to 10 physicians per year may qualify based on services provided to patients in secure correctional facilities. And finally, if funds remain available after all other qualifying physicians have received consideration, there is an alternative pathway to eligibility for primary care physicians who do not practice in HIPSAs but meet specified Medicaid service levels. We did not have sufficient funds in FY20 to approve loan repayment awards for these physicians. Next slide. This slide shows the history of appropriations for the program. For many years, the majority of the funding was from medical school tuition set-asides. The substantial increase in appropriations beginning with FY 2010 was a result of a new funding stream from smokeless tobacco tax revenue. The large decrease in appropriations for the biennium that followed was characteristic of many other state-funded programs at that time, as many of you will remember. Next slide. This slide shows how many current participants are in their first, second, third, and fourth year in the program. 28% of them are practicing in rural counties. Also, a number of physicians are practicing where the entire county is a designated HIPSA, but may have a population greater than 50,000. Also shown on this slide are the lowest, highest, and median debt levels for current first-year participants. The table inserted in the slide illustrates the trend of growing student loan debt for initial year participants over the last 7 years. The lowest figures indicate that some people enter the program after having made some payments on their loans for a while, whereas the highest figures, I'm sure you'll agree, reveal some rather shocking debt levels at $659,000. Next slide. This slide provides a breakdown of practice specialties currently represented in the program. And as you can see, family medicine represents the highest percentage among all practice specialties. Next slide. A guiding principle for states' financial aid programs as well as student loan repayment programs is that priority goes to renewal applicants. And as such, when the difficult decisions regarding the agency's budget reductions were under consideration, it was determined that funds would be preserved for continuation loan repayment awards, but no new applicants would be enrolled in 5 of the 6 loan repayment programs, the exception being a new program that was launched on September 1st for peace officers. So unfortunately, we will not be able to enroll new participants in the program this fiscal year. Next slide. Jody, thank you. So I'm going to move rather quickly through the next 3 slides because these tables, these retention figures are included in the latest annual financial aid report, which was approved at the October board meeting. The data are broken down by each cohort of physicians enrolled in the program, beginning with the large increase in funding in FY 2010. These figures represent only physicians practicing in HIPSAs. The number of distinct counties where they were located at the time of initial application is also included. For example, looking at cohort 1, 51 distinct counties were served by the 102 physicians at the time of their application. And 10 years after enrolling in the program, almost 50% are still practicing in HIPSAs. Next slide. The retention rates in year 3 for the 6 cohorts that have sufficient history were quite high, ranging from 70% to 88%. And then, I guess, next slide. This slide includes the most recent 4 cohorts of enrolled physicians. We were able to enroll 96 new participants practicing in HIPSAs during the fiscal year ending August 31st, 2020. We also conduct a 10-question anonymous survey every other year to gauge the degree to which this program influenced various decisions, including beginning practice in a HIPSA and remaining in a HIPSA. There's also an opportunity to provide free-form comments about the program, and many of them are quite touching and rewarding for the staff who work with the program. There was so much positive feedback, but I've randomly selected 6 comments to share with you on the next 2 slides. This slide includes comments from 5 physicians. The first one says, I am also proud to say that I have become a better physician after practicing in a HPSA. Every American physician, regardless of specialty, should spend a year at least in a rural community, truly understanding the sanctity of the patient-practitioner relationship and the relationship you have with your colleagues who are also working to take care of members of the community. Thank you for all of your help to my career, financial and otherwise. Another one says, this is an amazing program that helped me to be able to stay at my RHC and has been a helpful recruitment tool to attract other physicians to our area. This program has made a dramatic improvement in my life and finances. I recommend it to everyone we interview to practice at our location. Here's another comment. It was a part of my decision to go into family medicine because the lower salary of family medicine wasn't such a big deal thanks to this amazing program. And then finally, loan repayment is a significant recruiting tool for Texas. This program influenced me to stay 4 years in an area of practice, and I've now been in the area for 11 years. Next slide. These comments are from one physician who expressed a lot of gratitude for the program. I went into medical school broke and graduated with over $250,000 in student debt. This number is suffocating, especially when one factors in the risks and liabilities a physician assumes when practicing. I personally did not work this hard to continue living like a broke student. However, my heart belongs to the community and I enjoy serving and treating this vulnerable population. The PELRP was a critical factor in my decision to stay at my community clinic. I was already practicing at a community facility when I learned about the program, and I honestly considered leaving to seek a more lucrative private practice. I feel valued. I feel that my work and accomplishments have been honored and rewarded by this program. I have peace of mind that I will be debt-free in the next 2 years versus 20 years, if not for this program. So again, we received so many comments like this, and I just randomly just selected those, but it's very touching. So this last slide, we're advising interested physicians to check the program webpage next summer for application information. Obviously, as with so many other programs, we'll be waiting to see what the legislature does. Contact information is up there. And I have to say, in almost 44 years of working with the coordinating board, this program has been one that I've probably most enjoyed working with because of the kinds of comments that I was just reading. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have. Anybody have any questions?
Lisa, thank you for that update. And I would agree that stories are very powerful. And it's great to see that information. It really has an impact on those folks' lives and the communities across Texas too. Any questions for Lisa?
Sorry, is there, did you say there was no funding available for this current year?
Well, as with all of our loan repayment programs, we ran the numbers to see what would be needed to fund renewal applications for people who are already enrolled in the program. And that was the case for this program as well. And that was, so that helped determine the funds that we would not be using for new applicants. So that helped determine our portion of the agency budget reductions.
Okay.
So yes, you're right. There are no new applicants being accepted this fiscal year.
And how many people would that be normally?
Well, it roughly, like last year, it was 96 people.
96.
So it tends to be around 100. And we've been through this before. It's such a shame. But you know, the program rebounded after the previous time we had to kind of close the doors to applications. It's disappointing for your third year residents that have been, you know, maybe counting on this, but it is what it is. The budget cuts had to be made.
I think it would be interesting to hear about the impact afterwards with the new folks not being able to receive awards. I did think that you said that the existing ones will be able to be funded and continue Is that right?
That's correct. And what we tell people is, just hang on. This program has had a long history of strong support from the legislature. And it's our hope that, of course, some people will have completed their 4th year of service, which, will open up opportunities if the legislature continues to fund the program at the level it has been doing, or really even close to that. I would imagine we'd be accepting new applications. We do have a very carefully prescribed list of priorities in the administrative rules, with first priority going to primary care specialties. And also, if we end up having to rank applications, there are criteria for, shortage areas that have the highest degree of shortage and that kind of thing, rural HIPSAs, et cetera.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you. We'll turn to our next agenda item, which is the legislative funding update. Mr. John Wyatt is going to present that.
Good morning. Can everyone hear me? Great. Good morning. John Wyatt, Senior Director of External Relations here at the Coordinating Board. Going to present a bit of an update on the 87th Texas legislative session, and then be happy to answer any questions y'all have at the end. I think it's fair to say that there are more questions going into this legislative session than in any session I've been familiar with. We started to get some answers yesterday. As you may have seen, it looks like Republicans will hold the Texas House and Senate after the final votes are tallied. The governor's office, lieutenant governor, were not on the ballot this year. So for the House, there's going to be a speaker's race. Several candidates have already announced for speaker. So we do expect that relatively quickly, the members will identify who's going to be speaker during the session. Another big question beyond the politics of the session is the logistics. Because of coronavirus, obviously the chambers are instituting new health and safety protocols. Usually at this point during the interim, there would have been many hearings to examine issues, but that hasn't been possible so far. What you have seen is some committees taking written submissions so far. You've also seen on the Senate side a couple of virtual hearings. So the Senate Higher Education Committee had a hearing a couple weeks ago where the members and the staff were in the committee room, but all witnesses participated virtually. Whether that is going to continue during the session, we don't know. So the logistics of how that's going to function are still being worked on. But it's going to have implications for the ability of the chambers to consider legislation. You're very likely to see a slowing of the legislative process. As committees, as members on the floor have to adapt to new procedures. So, a lot of questions still to be answered about how exactly the session is going to function once they come in January. I will say from the coordinating board point of view, regardless of what the arrangements are, we have a commitment, and our commissioner has a commitment that he's going to work collaboratively with policymakers, with institutions, and that we're going to provide objective, insightful data and analysis to help inform those decisions that are being made about higher education policy and funding. So really kind of in keeping with our shift away from a more regulatory posture toward a posture of working as a partner and an advocate for higher education. So rather than promoting an explicit coordinating board legislative policy agenda, we're going to focus on working with the governor's office and legislators in refining and advancing their agenda. So that's going to be our posture during the session. We're also going to be very focused on providing policymakers with relevant, useful data and analysis. Our commissioner has put a very strong focus on making our data accessible and more useful to stakeholders. So we're going to work to develop, again, objective, informative data, presentation materials, and information presentations that are going to be directly relevant to legislative decision making. And then the final element I'll touch on is I'm sure of interest to y'all. We will be working to support the agency's legislative appropriations request during the session. So there's been some conversation already about budget reductions. So to clarify a couple things, so we were required by state leadership to propose a 5% reduction for our budget in the current biennium, i.e. the funds that were appropriated last session for our agency. And so we prepared that and submitted it. We were also instructed in developing our LAR for next session. So the funding that will carry us through the subsequent biennium to also have a 5% reduction from our baseline of the previous biennium. So we went through a very rigorous exercise to identify what programs where, if we were required to take reductions, where we would take them and how much. And then we also were required to prioritize, which programs will be preserved from reduction as our recommendation to the legislature. And I will tell you that the two categories we recommended highest for preservation from reduction were student financial aid and then medical education. Because of the importance of those two categories for our state. And then we have also, as part of our LAR, submitted an exceptional item request to recommend to restore any reductions that the legislature might take, so that if there is funding available, we want to fill back in those reductions next session. But ultimately, the legislature is going to have to make some very difficult decisions this session. We don't know precisely what the budget situation is going to be. The comptroller will release the biennial revenue estimate. That is the number that the legislature has to work with in terms of the state budget. That's usually released in January, although I'm sure we'll hear before that some estimate out of the comptroller's office over what the legislature will have. So that's kind of my quick overview. At this point, I'd like to see if there are any questions or any areas I can help fill in some information.
Very good. So I would like to ask a question just to clarify. So I think you said that the 5% cut was initially for this biennium, funds for this biennium, and then next biennium, you guys are asked to put forward a budget that is another 5% reduction. Is that above the 5% this biennium, or is that based on the old figures for the biennium?
It is not cumulative. So we are not taking a 10% reduction in the next biennium. So we had to reduce 5% this biennium, and then essentially we have to start at that same baseline amount for next session, although we can allocate the cuts differently among programs.
You have some latitude there. Good.
Yep.
Other questions for John? I'm looking at this sea of gloomy faces. The news is not great. Thank you for that update.
Of course.
Hearing no other questions or discussion, I'll move on to the next item, which is the update from the Texas Academy of Family Physicians. I believe Tom Banning, the CEO and Executive Director, is going to provide an update for us. Tom?
Thanks, Mike Reagan. Did I get that right? Sorry, I couldn't help myself. I'm not sure what I can really add to what John has said. He's done a very nice job of kind of providing a framework or an outline of a lot of unknowns that we're going into this session. You know, I think Stacy might have mentioned this. You know, the current biennia that we're in, I believe we're looking at around a $4.5 billion shortfall. While that sounds like a lot, the reality is that we've got a little more than $2 billion that we did not spend on services that are available to plug some holes. All state agencies were requested to come up with 5% savings in their existing budget that will, again, fill a pretty good chunk of that $4.5 billion. And we've got about $9 billion in rainy day funds available. So, you know, while $4.5 billion sounds like a lot, it's very manageable. Going forward, the controller will come out with guidance based on, you know, what our oil prices are, what our sales tax revenue has been. You know, most of the folks that I have talked to, you know, think that we're probably looking at a manageable deficit of around $15 billion for the next biennia compared to the current biennia. What's really kind of a big question mark is how much of the CARES Act funds will be available for Texas to use that we haven't already spent, and how much may become available in subsequent federal support. You know, a lot of that's going to be dependent upon what happens over the next couple of weeks with the presidential election, the House and the Senate. So that's a long way of saying that we're just really not sure of what the budget is going to look like next session, but it's probably not as bad as most people thought in March or April. The other good thing, I think, from representing physicians is there's an acknowledgement or a recognition that the last thing you want to do in the middle of a pandemic is cut funding to healthcare. We have been very aggressive on trying to educate both the public, our elected officials, and the media on how the pandemic has affected both programs and private practice physicians in terms of the significant decrease we've seen in volume, patient volume, which obviously in a fee-for-service world plays into revenue. And the ability of practices and programs to continue to stay open and care for patients in this pandemic is, I think that there's a broad recognition of the importance that that our primary care physician workforce plays. I would encourage you, if you have not yet done so, to go to our website or to look at our latest magazine that really does a good job of outlining a plan that we put together called the Primary Care Marshall Plan. It's got 5 major components of it. One is moving away from fee-for-service to alternative payment models that would really unencumber or free up primary care doctors to really focus on the relational aspects of care as opposed to identifying, you know, transactional billing codes for patient visits. Secondly is really focusing on adopting and putting into place or I guess removing burdens for providing telemedicine and aligning payment for telemedicine services. A third is expansion of coverage, whether that is you know, expanding Medicaid, though that looks much more unlikely after the election, or looking at some private market solutions that we've identified that the state could pursue through various waiver policies. Fourth is workforce development, and you know, Stacy and Lisa did a great job of, you know, talking about, continuation of the continuation in funding for the family medicine residency programs. We've actually recommended bumping that number from 5,000 and change up to 10,000 per resident. Obviously, that would take new money, which in a tight budget cycle could be difficult, but if you don't ask, you don't get. As well as supporting the physician education loan repayment program and the preceptorship program. And lastly, is really looking at our public health infrastructure. Again, the COVID pandemic has really shown some of the shortcomings in terms of data collection, real-time information on COVID testing and other public health issues that we really need to strengthen. Obviously, once a vaccine comes online, having a robust immunization tracking registry is going to be critically important, where there's bidirectional information going to the state and coming back to the physicians and other healthcare providers. And as has been said often, you never want to waste a good crisis. And if you're looking for the pony near the pile of manure, there are some opportunities to really think differently about how our healthcare system is structured, how it's financed, some of the investments that we can make with some dollars that are coming out of the feds that we're really going to try to take advantage of coming into next session. So with all that said, we don't know who the speaker is going to be. We don't know who's going to be chairing the committees of jurisdiction that will make these decisions. We don't know how the legislature is going to operate, if they're going to be able to meet, and whether they're going to allow state agency officials or the public or hired lobbyists into the Capitol. But we figured out ways to communicate through technology. I'm confident that we'll be able to ensure that our voices and your voices are heard, and we'll just kind of go from there. So Mike, I'm happy to stop and take any questions.
Well, thank you, Tom Banning. Appreciate that comment. I had to work to come up with that too. It was not easy to butcher your name. So any questions for Tom? So I feel like we're hitting our stride. Everybody's giving me those subtle signals to keep chugging on. So thanks, Tom. We'll move on to the next item, which is update on the Faculty Development Center. And I believe Cindy Passmore is going to offer that for us. Cindy?
Hello. Thank you all for having me here. And for those of you that are out there treating patients and taking care of the rest of us, we all thank you very much. It's dangerous, and you're brave folks for doing it. So thank you very much for all of us for taking care of us. Thanks again for offering some additional funds. I'm glad that you're able to offer those funds back to the Rural Rotation Program. It's been, I think, about 15 years ago that I worked with you, Stacy, to do a study about the outcomes of the Rural Rotation Program. And it's worth every penny if you get just, if you get even just one physician to go into a rural area and practice medicine. So it's a great program, and I'm glad that you'll be able to put some money back to it. We haven't come to the full end of our report for this last fiscal year, for fiscal year 20, but I'll just give some highlights, and I don't think I need to put any documents up or anything. But I will say that I was shocked out of my complacency about Zoom. I didn't want, or virtual presentations. I really had been digging my heels in for a long time, and I am now convinced that we can do what we need to do virtually. The biggest, after we met last time, a couple days later, we had a conference for the chief residents, and we offered it at no fee. We usually charge for that conference, but we We offered it at no fee, and we had 157 unique logins over those 2 days. And there were several times where most of the people were logged in at the same time, and we were able to handle it. We had a few little glitches, and we finally have located what my personal internet issue was, and that was a good thing to do because I kept getting kicked off. But we were able to train. Got the numbers right here. Don't want to misstate them. There were of those 157 individuals, 20 or so were staff. We got some colleagues from across the campus to also come in. I trained them a little bit in helping to moderate in the Zoom rooms, when we put into the breakout rooms. But that we had 65 family medicine residents from Texas that were family medicine, and we had this notion that we had a year ago for the 2019 Chief Resident Conference. We decided to invite the program coordinators and program directors to the conference. It's a day and a half long, almost two solid days. And that was a great idea. It works very well to have the coordinators there because they're part of the leadership team along with the chief residents. The program directors, I don't think they don't really have enough time to devote. We get one or two each of the times we've tried to do that, but I think we'll continue to do invite at least the coordinators in. And we were able to do all the same programming that we've done in the past. We even had a yoga instructor that led us through some yoga stretches at breaks. We had a DJ that was at UNT HSC. There was a performing arts fellowship, and one of the performing arts fellows did a DJ break for us over one of the lunch hours, and it was really very entertaining, and it was a really nice break. We tried to pay attention to people's energy levels and not make them sit too long. And so the yoga, who was one of my staff colleagues, one of their college roommates, and it worked out really nicely for everybody. So I think that there are ways for us to do what we need to do in innovative ways, different ways, and still get the message across. Everything else that we're doing, we graduated 11 fellows last year in June of 2020, and we've got 10 fellows enrolled this year. And I lost 5 or 6 that were ready to come, but because of the pandemic, things changed. And we're looking to continue to grow the number of fellows that we train every year. And it's if you'll recall, maybe that's a graduate certificate in academic medicine, whereby you get graduate school credit granted through TCOM. And over the multi-year history, both in the Waco program and in Fort Worth, we average about 7 fellows per year. And the last several years, our average is continuing to go up. And what we're pushing towards is we would like for the graduate certificate year to be the first year in a master's degree program, and maybe a master's degree in health professionals, educators. That's what we're looking at. We've had this proposed and all the way to the provost a time or two, and it hasn't played out yet, but we're still working on that. So that's a project that I've been involved in for a couple years, and that if we're able to do that, we'll be able to increase our volume, and we'll have it will be mostly online. This year, what we're doing, we meet 7 times in Fort Worth typically, and the first session is in August and the last session is in June. It's a total of 30 days of training, 30 days when we're engaged with them, in the past it was 30 days on campus. This year what we've done is we met the fellows face to face in August for 5 days. And there were 10 of them. Well, there were 8 of them on campus and 2 of them that couldn't come in due to being from out of state. One lady was from out of state, and her program director wouldn't let her come back if she left, so she didn't leave. But we had one of the big medical school amphitheater kind of rooms. I think they probably seat like 250 people. But it was challenging with the sound systems because we were having to suppress one system to make another one project and that sort of thing. But we learned a whole lot, and we had 8 fellows spread out over a whole great big lecture hall, and so everybody was safe. Or on campus there, our maintenance people are furiously proud of the fact that they know how to disinfect a room. And I was going to show the lead fellow where people had been sitting that day, and he said, "It doesn't matter. We're going to wipe every surface in this room," and they did. And he's been able to keep his entire crew employed, and so we have good people up there helping us do what we do. That being said, we're going to meet in August. We already met in August, and then we're going to do the next 5 sessions. We're going to do them virtually, and then we hope to meet again in June. We also hope, so that's what's going on with the GCAM. We also hope to meet face-to-face in April with our colleagues in Austin when the Texas Academy, when Tom's Bunch get together for their interim session. And we have typically been meeting the Thursday before that session. And we expect that we'll have more people coming this year because they won't have all the stuff in Kansas City. The last, I think, what do you think, Mark? 3 or 4 years has it been where the program directors, PDW, has been in coincident with TAFP?
Yeah, 2 or 3 anyway. Yeah, it's kind of annoying and a little frustrating.
Right. Well, the TAFP staff has been aware of it for a while, and this year in 2021, the schedules are not going to overlap. So I think we were going to get our attendance back up. And given that we didn't get to meet last year, I think it'll also be back up if we hold our Family Medicine Leadership Conference. So the FDC is planning as if we're going to be able to meet face-to-face, knowing full well that there's a chance that our dean won't let us leave. They haven't lifted any kind of travel restrictions. And my boss, Lisa Nash, has some feeling that we won't be traveling in the spring. So we'll just see what we'll do. But we're going to plan for the best. We're going to hope for the best and plan for the worst case scenario. We'll do the same thing with the Chief Residents Conference. And that went so well online, virtually. We may do a blended where we have some people that come to campus if they want to, and others that just join us virtually. But it certainly allows for a lot more people to take part. So, and you can train a whole lot of folks that way. It was really, it doesn't cost as much because you don't have to, everybody doesn't have to convene in one room. You don't have to feed them and that kind of thing. I was pretty impressed with the outcomes, and we're learning a lot as we go along. I'm sure everybody is about the whole virtual situation. That is really most of what I thought I would share with you all. I do want to remind you that as part of the services that we provide, we will come. Now we can come to you virtually, but we will come to any family medicine residency program or department and do training for you. We can figure out just about anything that you need us to do. I think there's somebody either on the staff or we know someone that does a pretty good job of training in just about any kind of faculty development area you need. We do team building where we get together residents and the faculty all together, and that proves to be pretty successful. All sorts of teaching topics, of course, clinical teaching topics and communication. I've just started with a group up in the Dallas area doing they have 70 core faculty that we're training every month. So we're still doing that. We will do that for any program or department. We'll do one of those a year at no professional cost. It used to cost you what it costs us to travel, but we don't have to travel very far because we are all still mostly working from home. We have some presence on campus, but they don't want everyone there all at one time anyway. So I'm used to working from home. That's what I've done since we moved this center to Fort Worth. I've continued. I worked from home, and I would just go up there one day a week or whenever the fellowship was in session. So I'm kind of used to it. The rest of the folks are getting used to it, and actually finding that they can be much more productive than when you have to go to the office, because there's just lots of stuff you have to take care of when you're face to face with your colleagues.
All right. Well, thank you, Cindy. I appreciate the update. I agree. We're learning a lot about being virtual, and sometimes that's a great method. Any questions for Cindy?
Could I just make a comment? We expect a lot of our chief residents, and I think it's fantastic that we're actually able to give them some credible leadership training. I'm sure most programs feel the same way. So really appreciate that. It's very well received by the learners that we had involved with that this year. So special thanks for that from me personally and from our program. And then you had mentioned your boss, Lisa Nash, who used to be a member of this committee. Those of us who've been around a while. So if you give her a shout out for the support that she's continued to give us through the Faculty Development Center.
I will do that. Thank you.
Very good. Well said. Any other comments or questions? Okay, I'll move us on down to the next agenda item, which is consideration, discussion of future agenda items and also meeting dates. We'll first see if there are any recommendations for future agenda items.
Yep, Mike. The item that, and I'm not totally sure this is the business of this committee, but there was a situation we ran into here at our place that actually involved a postdoc trainee, but I'm concerned it might apply to our primary care trainees as well. And that's was the person was exposed to and got very, very sick from COVID and was unable to work, was in the hospital on the ventilator, the whole thing for weeks and weeks. So ran out of vacation time. The position was held, but had no pay to support the 3 children and wife, and had declined the disability insurance, short-term disability. So it was a very difficult situation, and wound up, we really didn't have any other options, and we wound up doing a GoFundMe thing, which, worked, but it just made me concerned that maybe we have trainees who are exposed to similar risk. As Cindy mentioned, it's a dangerous time out there. And fortunately, these are mostly all young folks, but somebody gets bad sick with this stuff and it can just be a horrible situation. So I just wanted to bring it up, see if this is something that's maybe it's already covered. Maybe everybody's got some backup insurance or whatever, but just thought I'd raise the question.
I'm thinking maybe that could be something, if we can, Cindy, for the leadership session in April, that might be interesting to talk about some of those options. I think there might be an interest from broad audience. It is terribly impactful for individuals, and it varies greatly, but that might be an interesting topic to consider.
I will put it on the discussion agenda. Thank you.
I think it's a great point and an interesting question for us to consider. Other ideas about agenda items? You know, we'll have the usual fare that you expect. We'll talk about legislative things, funding things. Those will all be there as expected. But any additional topics that you guys can think of?
Yeah, just as I mentioned earlier, if it's possible to update reports on where people are winding up in practice, I think it'd be nice to get that, and whatever other information we have on demographics, diversity, and all these issues that we're thinking about a lot more these days. Might be nice to it just may be already on the list of things to be reported on. I know Stacy's really looking forward to doing more reports, but I think it's nice to kind of check in on that periodically and just kind of see where we are with meeting the needs of getting physicians out to people across the state.
I would agree. You know, having the data that we have, I guess we have for some programs, some of that data. It'd be interesting to know what that looks like. And we heard about a little bit of that today related to the I think the loan repayment program. There was some data about that. So it'd be curious what we have. It'd be nice to look at. I think, Dr. Silverman, if we've got it. That's good. Other items?
Dr. Warwick here. Apologize. I had a couple of drop-offs with my Wi-Fi, but I guess the question that I have is the projection that the CB might have with regards to the number of new family medicine residency slots that are going to be coming up 2 years from now, 3 years from now, 4 years from now. Because again, if the pie remains the same size, each slice is going to be less. And just to have a better understanding of what those projections are going to be. And then one of the things that was on the discussion last time was, again, part of the leadership part with Cindy Passmore and everything. And I guess it would just be, helpful to have a better understanding of what impacts might, or what things might have to be considered at the next voting, because I think it will be voting on a certain level of funding, as it also relates to the ancillary support for them that they received, the $100,000, or I remember like the last time there was $100,000, $50,000, and it would just be, I think it'll be important to know what impacts there are. The reason why I say that is because the last time that we were here, I said that if we go below $5,000, that can be, I think, of a detriment to programs. I'm glad that, there was some funding that was able to be found to get that back up, $5,000 roughly per resident. But looking at how the things are going to be at this next biennium, and projecting that we may be asked to even work with less, it'd be good to have as much information as we can have to make good decisions.
I think that those are good points. And I think really our number one job is to guide the allocation of funds, to offer guidance. And so I think anything that can help frame that would be useful. I like the idea of thinking about what we're facing going out in terms of maybe over a 5-year period, what the growth of residencies are, at least as best we can project. I think we should do that. And then I'm not sure about FDC, what kinds of projections might be offered there. Do you have some thoughts about that, Dr. Warwick?
Well, again, I can surmise that maybe there was some cost savings with regards to switching from a physical conference to a virtual conference. What are the cost savings that are in there? So that understandably there is work that needs to be done and effort that is given by these individuals in there, and it would be nice to be able to preserve that, but to also understand, what have been the cost savings from these virtual events that we are now holding and potentially could be holding into the future, to then be able to see where best to allocate any funds moving forward.
Okay, so, you know, it sounds like you're asking about like a previous budget to this past year's budget and the delta there to see. I don't know if that's possible, Cindy, to do. It'd be helpful to kind of understand if there was a drop in operational costs with the virtual swing to some of these meetings. So I think that's what you're asking. Is that right?
In essence, yeah. I guess I'm trying to figure out how much of the budget goes to supplementing programs when they send a resident there. Yeah, they send a little bit of, they send it for a certain cost, but is there an additional cost that is supplemented from on that conference, whether it's in person and now that if it's virtual, is there a savings that can be applied?
Okay.
Just because I can foresee us being presented, hey, this is how much, 100,000, 50,000, 25,000 again at the next meeting with regards to funding FCC. So that's all.
Okay.
I know some gross figures just from what happened over this last year. We did save some money in our with our operating funds, just because we didn't do a lot of things. There were some.
Yeah, my statement is not as much of knowing what it is now. I'm just saying in preparation for our next meeting, when we're probably going to be voting on a level of funding after the next biennium or the like, and we know how much we have. I think you'll be able that have knowing more about what your budget is like and what support at a minimum is needed. Of course, we want to give you the maximum, but what the minimum is needed just in the event. Because I'm going from the side of per residency program, if it's going to get below 5,000, that is a challenge for the programs themselves. I understand that you do great work as well, and it's important work, but it also makes a challenge on the residency programs when we get down below a certain level.
You know, another thing that I think you're stating is the prioritization of what we want to focus on. I think in the past we've talked about resident funding is seed corn type funding. You don't want to dig into that too deeply. Just as our colleagues at the coordinating board have prioritized different programs for full funding, I think that'd be a good discussion kind of broadly.
Would
Reagan, I'm sorry.
Would it be all right if I were to work with Ernest and give him some funding scenarios and just let him know just a couple, more or less like you all do as you go to vote to see if you're going to have any money for supporting funds, some different levels of things. I can work with him over the next year or whatever.
Options are always good to kind of give us an idea. That's good. I think that's a good idea. Okay.
Dr. Reagan, just to add to that, so we anticipate to add 2 more programs, which will put us way over the 900 mark and close to that $5,000 threshold. So in the next 2 years, 2 more programs and maybe about 36 residents at full complement. So that'll put us right at about the 930 range in terms of total residents, with the understanding that, of course, we still have folks that are completing training and off cycle. So between 9 and 930 within the next 2 years. To fund. So that does bring the current per resident closer to 5,000. So the more we add, of course, that is more to divvy up. So
well, I think that was the request for the projection too. I think that's good to have that. So it gives us a feel for that. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Other suggestions? I'm watching the time and we're getting close. Okay, I don't hear any other suggestions. So we're going to turn now to the meeting dates, and our discussion prior to the meeting was to look at perhaps a April date and a June date. And Ernest, you want to tell us what weeks we're thinking of?
Sure. So in April, we're thinking April 7th, I believe is a Wednesday, and the following week, the 14th or the 15th, and those are a Wednesday, Thursday. Historically, the Wednesdays have worked pretty good for the group, but I'm not sure if the committee has a preference, whether it's a morning or afternoon start time. So those are the 3 dates that we're looking at in April. In June, after the session concludes, we have June 16 and June 17. and the following week, the 23rd and the 24th, also a 10 to 12 duration, and it's a Wednesday, Thursday also.
Can I make one comment about the April date? Has typically been the Wednesday before the Family Medicine Leadership Conference, which is right before the TAFP session, and that would be on the 14th if you followed that same old pattern.
And as we sit today, Ernest, do we have an idea? Are we thinking we're going to be virtual again? Is that the thought?
I believe so. That's going to be probably the case. Things seem to work pretty good and run smoothly. So if everybody's comfortable with the virtual setting, we'll stick with that platform.
It's nice, I think.
Yes,
Any
sir.
comments about the virtual platform? Does everybody agree? Disagree?
No, it's good.
Okay.
So we'll make whatever works. This time frame seems to work pretty well. I prefer something that doesn't straddle morning and afternoon, so that you just got half the day to work if go full session or something.
Yes, sir.
Are you looking for a recommendation on a date now, or what's your thought?
Yes, please.
Anybody want to make a motion?
So Dr. Strands, I would motion that we have the first meeting on April the 14th.
The 10 to 12 timeframe works?
Yes.
Okie doke. I think for this one, we can just vote by acclamation. Anybody, those that agree with that date, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody doesn't like that date? It looks like they're all ayes. So no disagreement. So we're gonna meet on April the 14th. That's a Wednesday, 10 to 12, and that'll be during the session. And then how about on the time frame in June? Any preferences there? I know if we get too late, we'll get close to graduation potentially. What are y'all's thoughts?
I prefer the earlier one, but I could make either work. It just gets into orientation, but.
Right.
So that Wednesday would be the 16th.
Are you, Mark, are you making a motion for the 16th from 10 to 12 then?
I brought it up for conversation. I'm willing to make a motion.
I would accept it if you are.
So moved.
Okie doke. Do we have a second?
I second it, Fred Unger.
Unger's got the second. Okay. All those in favor of choosing Wednesday, June the 16th from 10 to noon for our second meeting of the year, say aye. Raise your hand.
Aye.
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 Anybody opposed? So we've got our two meeting dates. Thank you. And we'll make sure that gets sent out to everybody, as well as the link that Dr. Silverman promised on the website for that report. We'll get that all together for you. Okay. Do we have any other business to discuss?
Dr. Reagan, I just had one comment come in earlier from the field. One of the residency program directors commented, faculty and resident wellness initiatives are in need of greater support secondary to ACGME requirements and effect of COVID. So I just wanted to relay that message.
I kind of deflected Dr. Foxhall's over to Cindy, that original report or request, but that might be a way to go at it, is to discuss that issue. And so if that's agreeable, we may try and work up an agenda item on that. I think it's very valuable. It's been rough for our people. And so I think it's good to consider that.
Yes, sir.
Any other business? So I'm looking for a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
A motion and a second, I think. And so all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody
Aye.
opposed?
Aye.
All right. Well, listen, I want to thank you all for taking time out of your day. I know you guys are really busy. Appreciate all the effort that you all have put forward today. It's a huge impact on our state and the workforce. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you,
It was
everyone.
great to see you guys.
Nice to see everybody.
I hope I get to see you for real in April.
Absolutely. Well, take care.